Rashee Rice was a revelation for the Kansas City Chiefs in his rookie season, and during the beginning of his sophomore campaign in the NFL, he looked to be a revelation to the NFL writ large. But it was not to be, as he would go down with a nasty knee injury as a result of letting down his starting quarterback. Now, one of the things that kind of goes out of vogue right after you're drafted is the comp, right? This player compares to that player. But we do have an interesting comp today in an article from Last Word on Sports. An article titled Top 10 Receiver, Chiefs Rashee Rice Draws Comparison to Panthers Legend by David Latham. We have the following. The Kansas City Chiefs made it to the Super Bowl last year despite losing wide receiver Rashee Rice early in the season. A second-round pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the SMU product began his career in promising fashion, recording 79 receptions for 938 yards and 7 touchdowns on 102 targets while helping the Chiefs win another Super Bowl. He built on that impressive campaign, recording 24 receptions for 288 yards and 2 touchdowns in 3 games before a knee injury sidelined him for the season. Now, well on the path to recovery, Sports Illustrated's Albert Breer reports that the wide receiver finished the offseason program without much, if any, after effects from last year's knee injury. He goes on to report the Kansas City Chiefs believe Rice will grow into a top 10 receiver in 2025. They should believe that because through the first 4 games of last season, Rashee Rice was leading the NFL in receptions and yards. So he was not a top 10 receiver last year while he was on the field. He was a top receiver while he was on the field. They see an edge physically to his game, recalling the way Steve Smith Jr. used to play. I don't see that, but I do see a different wide receiver that we're going to talk about in a moment. Chiefs think Rice will be a top 10 receiver. Only time will tell if Rice lives up to these lofty expectations, but he was on pace for a remarkable 2024. If you extrapolate his 3 healthy games last season to an entire year's stats, the wide receiver was on pace for 136 receptions, 1,632 yards, and 11 touchdowns. That wouldn't have been top 10 stuff. That would have been top 5 stuff. This could be partially inflated due to lack of reliable targets, but it shows that he's earned the trust of Patrick Mahomes and should be a featured part of the offense as long as he's on the field. The only question is whether he'll actually suit up. While Breer's article indicates he is healthy, Rashee Rice could still face a suspension for his involvement in the 2024 car crash. ESPN's Adam Schefter suggests the NFL won't suspend Rashee Rice in 2025, although the Chiefs wide receiver could face a suspension in 2026 once the legal proceedings conclude. That would be an incredible delay delay of punishment, I guess I should say. But I don't think... Is this choppy? What is going on here? I don't understand what's happening with my camera. I don't know if it's my internet connection or what, but I apologize for the way that this looks. I look like I'm in a Peter Gabriel video. I don't see the comparison to Steve Smith. I don't think Steve Smith is an apt comp at all for Rashee Rice. I think that Steve Smith was a much different receiver. Steve Smith perhaps closer akin to Tyreek Hill on some levels than is Rashee Rice. But I do think that there is a very interesting comp from NFL past for Rashee Rice, and this is what I'm talking about. Jimmy Smith, formerly of the Cowboys, which you might not remember, and the Jaguars, which if you remember Jimmy Smith, that's how you remember him. So just comparing these two, Jimmy Smith, 6 foot tall, 3/4 inches. Rashee Rice, 6 foot 5/8 inches. Jimmy Smith, 200 pounds. Rashee Rice, 204. Both have 32-inch arms. Jimmy Smith's hands a little bit bigger. Jimmy Smith ran a 4.58 compared to Rashee Rice, a 4.51. Now, one of the interesting things here, the Jaguars offense that was so good with Mark Brunell at the helm, Jimmy Smith on one side and Keenan McCardell on the other, was good despite the fact I think Keenan McCardell ran a 4.59 40-yard dash. So their two starting wide receivers ran a 4.58 and a 4.59. And Keenan McCardell was undersized too at 175. So how it was that he was good in the NFL, I don't know. The 10-yard split is definitely an advantage towards Rashee Rice with a 1.49 compared to a 1.59 for Jimmy Smith. But they're similar around the 20-yard mark, 2.59 for Jimmy Smith, 2.54 for Rashee Rice. Now, Rashee Rice is less agile but more explosive. 20-yard short shuttle for Jimmy Smith, 4.14, a 4.23 for Rashee Rice, a 35-inch vert for Jimmy Smith, a 41-inch vert for Rashee Rice, 10-foot broad jump for Jimmy Smith, and a 10-foot 8-inch broad jump for Rashee Rice. Now, what was it that Jimmy Smith went on to do in the NFL? Here's what I was talking about with the Cowboys. Jimmy Smith started in the NFL in 1992 before missing 2 years. He started with the Cowboys, where he appeared in 7 games, racked up 0 stats. Then he had appendicitis in 1993 and was out of the NFL in 1994 before the Jaguars picked him up, and he would be one of that franchise's greatest players. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons, 9 total 1,000-yard seasons, 67 career touchdowns, 12,287 career yards, nearly 900 receptions and 862 receptions. 1,500 targets, by the way. So there was a couple years there where he wasn't cashing in at the rate that you would have hoped. But you see that 1999 season with 116 receptions that led the league. If memory serves me, and I could be completely wrong, that was or was tied for the record at that time, because at that time, was it Ed McCaffrey? No. It was a Broncos receiver was racking up just crazy amounts of receptions. I can't remember which Broncos receiver it was, but and then Marvin Harrison, of course, was getting loads of receptions. But this was the career had by Jimmy Smith, a wide receiver that I really do think is an appropriate comp for Rashee Rice, a decent sized receiver who is tough. I think the toughness is where they're going with that Steve Smith comp, but Rashee Rice is tough without being necessarily the fiery guy, right? I think that is the difference between Rashee Rice and Steve Smith in that way. But Jimmy Smith, very tough guy, was a guy that was just maybe not always open, but always able to make the catch. And I think that is something that we might see develop in the game of Rashee Rice. He was a wide receiver who was never really particularly flashy, a wide receiver that I don't think you would have on too many. So, for example, 1998's all-time catches. There's a lot of Randy Moss on there. There's a lot of Chris Carter on there. Probably not a whole lot of Jimmy Smith, but Jimmy Smith was on the field. Jimmy Smith was making receptions. Jimmy Smith was changing the game, but it was not flashy. And I think that's what we're going to end up seeing with Rashee Rice for the Chiefs offense. That is all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting a like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.